What's up guys, MTG Matt for you. Today we're going into the ladder with a Jeskai Control deck that I specifically built to combat all the mono black decks that are running around in the ladder. I got an amazing game for you in today's video, and if you want to see the full deck, just stay till the end where I go into detail for this deck. So hope you guys enjoyed the video and I see you guys soon.
Fight finished before brunch. Don't overthink things.
Consider yourself fortunate our motives align. Blood for knowledge, a fair trade.
Drop it. Sorry, I'm not interested in dying today.
I take no joy in the slaughter, but it's necessary work. Dire times call for dire tactics. Balance may never be restored now. great for one of us. Don't worry. Only a little mischief.
Frankly, destruction is best left to the Go on. Impress me.
I'm not overconfident. You're just underwhelming.
You're no match for my students.
Keep watch for intruders.
And some think time only flows in one direction.
to end it. I am almost sad to see you go. I guess that's it then. We must protect the people.
Distractions. Let's make this quick. I'm tired of your secrets. No fun when they hit back.
Just as delightful as speeding things up. And some think time only flows in one direction.
This is my home, and I don't appreciate it when people touch my things. Don't overthink things.
Home. Guards, to me! We must protect the people.
Fine. I'll take my zombies and leave.
A second here, a second there. Who's counting?
You should fight fire with fire. You should fight You're no match for my students.
I've got some time to more cunning than I thought. The next few moments will be exciting.
Go on. Impress me.
I know. I'm right on time. Give me a moment. Or a few.
I strive for elegance and speed in my work. Embrace the heat of the moment.
I've got some time tinkering to do. The future looks bright for one of us.
Get out there and blaze a path.
Should have seen that coming.
I strive for elegance and speed in my work.
What's up guys, it's MTG Matt for you. So today I've got a juicy deck for you, which is a Jeskai Control deck, and I built this deck because I was just fed up getting my ass beat by all these mono black control decks that are running around. We're speaking of Liliana being everywhere, Tenacious Underdog being everywhere, Invoke Despair being everywhere, Shieldred being everywhere. It's just a lot of the meta, right? And it's very annoying. So I tried to figure out a solution for that. And this deck right here is specifically good against mono black. Against other deck, it's like a decent 50%-ish deck, 50% win rate-ish deck. But against mono black, specifically, it works pretty well. So let's take a look at this beauty together. What's the idea of this deck? So we want to be able to answer all the threats of the mono black control decks very efficiently. And then we win with our super friends consisting of the Wandering Emperor, Jaya, Fiery Negotiator, and Teferi, who slows the sunset. And to do this, let's start with the most important piece of this puzzle to combat mono black, and that is the new card called Temporal Firestorm. I really like this card actually. So Temporal Firestorm is a 5-mana sorcery in red, and you can kick it for 1 in the white and for 1 in the blue. And first of all, it deals 5 damage to each creature and its planeswalker, and then for each time you kick it, you get to phase out a non-land permanent. Which means that those permanents that you phase out won't be affected by the damage of Temporal Firestorm. And the reason why this is so great in this meta, and especially against mono black, is that mono black poses threats in the form of creatures, that is something like Tenacious Underdog, Evolving Sleeper, and Shieldred. And on the other hand, they threaten you with planeswalkers in the form of Liliana and Sorin. And the beautiful thing is that Shieldred has 5 toughness, and the starting loyalty of Liliana and Sorin, even if they +1 immediately, is also never greater than 5. I think if Sorin enters the battlefield and immediately +1, he's exactly at 5 loyalty, which means that Temporal Firestorm can reliably just wipe the whole board, including both creatures and planeswalkers. And that's the way to deal with those decks, right? You get rid of all the threats at once, and this way you can start stabilizing and controlling the game. And on top of that, since we are winning with planeswalkers, later in the game when we have a lot of mana, we can just kick this Temporal Firestorm and protect up to 2 of our planeswalkers. So it's just a very cool design card, and since you want to protect our planeswalkers, it's better in this deck than Burn Down the House, because Burn Down the House also costs 5 mana and also lets you deal 5 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. But the second mode on Burn Down the House only lets you make some devils, and we don't need this in this deck because we're gonna win for our planeswalkers anyway. So this is the most important piece in this deck to combat mono black. Then we have 2 copies of Farewell. Speaking of board wipes, Farewell is also really good in this meta. So first of all, Farewell never hits planeswalkers, which goes well with our strategy of wanting to have planeswalkers on the board and winning with them. And also Farewell can exile graveyards, which means you can get rid of those Tenacious Underdogs your opponent has, your mono black opponent has. So 2 copies of Farewell work really well in this meta. Then let's start talking counter spells. So we run 3 copies of Negate. I think Negate is very powerful in this meta because mono black, first of all, they use planeswalkers, but then the main thing you probably want to counter with Negate is Invoke Despair, because Invoke Despair is an absolutely nasty card, and Negate helps against that. So we got 3 copies of Negate. It can also counter an early Liliana because we only need 2 mana to counter her, and if we go second, we can have 2 mana open when your opponent plays Liliana on turn 3. Then we have 3 copies of Devious Cover-Up, because this deck wants to just, wants the game to go long. and Devious Cover-Up enables us two things. First of all, we can shuffle back all the stuff we want back in the deck. If you want more board-wise back in the deck or more negates, that's really, really nice. But also Devious Cover-Up is a counter spell that exiles the spell countered, and since we also live in a meta where there are like reanimation decks and again Tenacious Underdog, exiling a spell is really, really useful. So this is our counterspell package consisting of a total of 6 cards. Then let's talk about cheap removal. We run 3 copies of Fateful Absence. Although I have to put a disclaimer here. So Fateful Absence destroys any creature or planeswalker and its control investigates. While Fateful Absence is cheap and destroys anything, I think there is a big problem with it in this meta in that it gives your opponent clue token. So your opponent gets to redraw a card eventually. And what I want to experiment with, which I really want to show really quickly here, is I want to experiment in this deck with replacing Fateful Absence with what is it called, Spirit Rend? I'm gonna check here. Oh, it's called Rending Flame. So Rending Flame is a 3-mana instant in red. It deals 5 damage to a creature or planeswalker if the permanent is a spirit. Rending Flame also deals 2 damage to the permanent's controller. The second part here is completely unimportant, but 5 damage is the damage you need to deal to kill a Shieldred, which I think is the benchmark that you have to look out for a damage-based removal spell. And sure, Rending Flame deals 1 more damage and costs 1 more mana. However, I think in a deck like this where you're very controlly and you want to go into the late game, paying 1 more mana might be fine in exchange for not giving your opponent a clue token. So this is something I want to experiment with. But the version I used in this video was the one with 3 Fateful Absences. So that's some cheap removal. And then we run 2 copies of Flameless Bolt, just 1 red mana to deal 2 damage to a creature or planeswalker. But then if that creature or planeswalker would die, you exile it instead, which is super important to exile Tenacious Underdog. Tenacious Underdog has exactly 2 toughness, so Flameless Bolt kills it and exiles it so that it doesn't come back from the graveyard. That's why we run it in here. So this is our cheap removal. And then finally, let's talk about card draw. And card draw, our planeswalkers, and some spice I put into this deck. So speaking of card draw, for cheap card draw we run 3 copies of Impulse. Instant look at top 4, put 1 of them into your hand and the rest on body for library in any order. This is really here in the early game to make sure we hit all land drops. And in the late game, it's just always great to, you know, get through your deck faster and find exactly the stuff you need. Also, if you counter a spell with Devious Cover-Up, in the late game it's totally reasonable to shuffle Impulse back into your library, because even if you draw it and you have a lot of mana, you don't mind paying 2 extra mana to look at an additional 4 cards to get the best card out of there. And then we run 4 copies of Memory Deluge, and this is something I realized with this deck during deck building, is that right now with standard rotation, and even with Dominaria United, this new expansion, Memory Deluge is pretty much the only good card draw spell you have in blue. I've tried a little bit of the new card draw spell. What's it called? I don't know. The X blue card draw spell that lets you draw X cards and it has flash if X is 3 or less. I tried that a little bit, but I didn't really like it, and I think Memory Deluge is just straight up better. So if you're looking in a control deck and you're playing blue for good card draw right now, this is pretty much the only choice you have. So yeah, we have 4 copies of Memory Deluge, not real much to talk about here. And then let's talk about our win condition. We run 4 copies of the Wandering Emperor because in the early game she acts as a removal spell and as a stabilizing mechanism. You can flash her in, exile a creature, gain 2 life, and then also make a samurai. Also, the nice thing is that since she's flash speed, you can really choose when you want to commit with the Wandering Emperor, because you might instead want to cast the Memory Deluge if you know that on the next turn you want to cast Temporal Firestorm. So we got 4 copies of the Wandering Emperor, because she helps us in the early game to stabilize, and then later in the game she can also, you know, make samurais and help us win the game. Then we got 2 copies of Jaya Fire Negotiator, and I'm really impressed by this Planeswalker, because when she got previewed I was like, yeah, I think she could work in mono red or something. But the fact is, if you have a Planeswalker that pluses its loyalty while making a token, that's extremely powerful, because Jaya is very good at defending herself, and those Monk tokens with prowess actually can really pack a punch with all the non-creature spells we have in our deck. And then she occasionally can also draw you into an additional card with her -1. You probably in this deck never really use the -2, but it could happen. And then surprisingly often with this deck, you will get to the -8, but in this deck you rarely ever use it, because there isn't really a payoff. Unless you want to copy like a Flameless Sword or Temporal Firestorm, but you don't really need that. So the fact that she hits her ultimate so consistently really gets me thinking about, there could be another version of Jeskai Control where you lean more towards red-based spells, so you can really make use of her ultimate. So Jaya, real good. And then we got 2 copies of Teferi, who's Lost the Sunset. Teferi is nice because the +1 is life gain, which is very good against, you know, mono black, because mono black also has some burn because of Invoke Despair. The -2 lets you, you know, draw a card basically, and then if you ever get to the ultimate, you just get more and more resources, which is really powerful. It's just a good all-around Planeswalker, right? And now finally we get to the spice of this deck. Because we run 2 Teferis, I put in 1 Timeless Lotus in here, and I actually think for control decks, a single copy of Timeless Lotus can work pretty great, because you can just put down Timeless Lotus, and then if you untap with it, you have, you know, almost double your mana in a lot of cases, and you have so much more resources. And Teferi can untap Timeless Lotus, right, because it's an artifact, so then it gets really crazy. So it's just nice to get a lot of mana in the late game, and you can, in this deck, use it very consistently with Memory Deluge. And then I put 1 copy of Resembles the Titans in here just to experiment with it. My result is I'm not really impressed by this card. I will probably cut it. But what this does is you can just put it down, scry a little bit, maybe you draw a Planeswalker right away in Chapter 1. On Chapter 2, you can put a Planeswalker card for free onto the battlefield. And then Chapter 3 is the big one, because you can activate loyalty abilities of Planeswalkers twice in a turn instead of once. So Chapter 3 can be especially good if you manage to ultimate Teferi with it. Otherwise, it isn't really that impressive, and I would probably just cut it. And that's the deck. Had really fun playing with this, had really fun just, you know, punching back on mono black to climb the ladder. So hope you guys enjoy the games, and I see you guys soon.